Canto 11, Chapter 8. When the living entity has been seized by the serpent of time, he becomes sober and sane, and at the same time detaches himself from all material sense gratification. In that condition, the living entity is qualified to be his own protector. And we didn't read this, correct? No. Okay, so Bhaktisiddhanta's translation is, importantly different. It's not his own protector, but act for his own protection. So Bhaktisiddhanta's translation of this verse. Only when one can see how this material world is being swallowed by the serpent of time does he become sober, and thus comes to his senses. Thus he refrains from all types of material enjoyment and becomes qualified to act for his own protection. Now that's a big, for his own protection. Gopta, protector. So he places himself under the supreme protector and thus acts for his own protection. BBT purport reads, in this verse Pingala states that by the Lord's mercy, a self-realized soul can see that the entire universe is existing within the jaws of the great serpent of time. Certainly this is not a promising situation. And one who sees it loses his desire for sense gratification. Thus, by the Lord's causeless mercy, the spiritually sane living entity can protect himself from illusion. Paragraph. Since Pingala is now glorifying the personality of Godhead for his mercy in awarding salvation, the following question might arise. Is she worshipping the Lord out of love, or is she merely a salvationist desiring liberation from material existence? In answer, it may be said that in her Krishna-conscious situation, she is already liberated. Even though remaining in this world, her program will now be simply to render loving service to the personality of Godhead without any personal desire, including that of salvation. So she's Bhaktin Pingala. She's on the bhakti path now. Is everything okay? Okay. And continuing the commentary. When a conditioned soul, this is Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary or purport. When a conditioned soul becomes self-realized and his natural propensity for the Lord's service is awakened, he received the spiritual strength to protect himself from falling back down into material existence. As a result, he is no longer anxious to enjoy this material world, nor does he become intoxicated by thoughts of material enjoyment. Paragraph. It is only in forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord that a living entity indulges in sense gratification under the influence of the time factor. Such a materialistic life is the result of one's aversion to the Supreme Lord. One can be influenced by the material time factor sense objects and sense pleasure only as long as one is ignorant of his eternal constitutional position. The bodily conception of life separates the living entities from the cultivation of Krishna consciousness and makes them falsely think of themselves as the enjoyers of material nature. There's an interesting, in one of Shivaram Raj's most recent books, or his most recent book, he's describing, the topic is sadhana bhakti, which is where we are, and he is describing the stages of sadhana bhakti, and he has reference to a purport of Baladev Vidyabhusan from Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, where there's some indication of the word indifference. Here it's aversion, raga, dvesha. Dvesha means aversion, like I don't like the Supreme Lord. His indication from Baladev is there's this slightly different explanation. There's indifference. You could say indifference is another way of saying aversion. But in that indifference space, the default begins. The contemplation of enjoyment. So when attraction weakens, you can say raga, weakens. So the message is to go the other direction. Raga has to awaken, or attraction has to awaken, instead of, it's like chanting japa. And when we're distracted, what happens? There's indifference towards the object. We're chanting because it's dutiful. Attraction is not, raga hasn't been awakened yet. So it's dutiful, and it's a struggle. The distraction platform is very familiar to all of us. It's a kind of indifference up to the object, the name of Krishna and Krishna. So we can continue, but it's up and down, sometimes. So to go to a further stage of bhakti, it can be discussed either way. This is discussing moving from the position of affinity to aversion, but in between you can. It's important in one sense, it's semantical in another sense. There are these the default position, the healthy and natural position action. Pingala has been restored. And one of the major things that helped her was mercy. With the mercy, seeing the path of happiness through fruitive activities is futile. There's no happiness there. But if you don't know where happiness is, because of indifference, so in our chanting or our practice of bhakti, the intent is to awaken the attraction, or to go beyond the indifference to affinity, attachment, bhava. There's obstacles, the fickle mind and the attraction to being enjoyers. So, but that attraction to being enjoyers of sense objects, it's the consequence of, you can say, either indifference or aversion. One can be influenced by the material time factor, sense objects and sense pleasure, only as long as one is ignorant of his eternal constitutional position. The bodily concept of life separates living entities from the cultivation of Krishna consciousness and makes them falsely think of themselves as enjoyers of material nature. That's the distraction. enjoying objects and enjoying and not suffering, and the world of duality is the default position when affinity for the object. So she Pingala has gone beyond that. She just wants that this raga. We read it yesterday, discussed it. Raga she has towards the Supreme Lord. So that's helping her to go completely beyond this the yo-yo position, the unsteady mind position. Bhaktisiddhanta's summary of Vishwanath's commentary. One may ask, by what means can one be delivered from the dark well of material existence? That's kind of the question that Uddhava was asking at the very beginning from chapter 6. This is chapter 8. The answer is that when one realizes that the entire material creation is being swallowed by the serpent of time, then he can become indifferent to all kinds of material enjoyment. Being endowed with this understanding, one becomes his own protector. Pingala replies to that question. By what means can one be delivered? Recently, this was my personal experience, and thus I became freed from the clutches of material existence without separate endeavor. Now I will worship Lord Vishnu with love and devotion. This is the sum and substance of this verse. Vishwanath writes, will you worship the Lord with the idea of getting deliverance? No. When the jiva becomes detached from all material enjoyment, akilat, since he sees the world devoured by time, at that time, Atma in his own, as is his own protection from samsara. Now, Atma needs Paramatma. But making that choice, you get Paramatma. It's implicit. My Atma has this very nature. Thus, I have been delivered from samsara automatically and would then worship the Lord in prema alone. Jiva Goswami's Krama Sandarbha, he states the verse this way: the living entity sees that the entire universe has been seized by the serpent of time when, becoming sober, he detaches himself from all material enjoyment. The Lord is his protector. So we did speak about this, didn't we? Yes. Because which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Which is the cause and which is the effect? Is detachment the cause of now I'm freed from attachment, I can move to bhakti, or when bhakti awakens, then one can let go of attachment? When Atma, being sober, becomes detached from everything other than Paramatma, he sees the world devoured by time. Anyway, text 43. No purport or anything. The Avadhuta said, thus her mind completely made up, Pingala cut off all her sinful desires to enjoy sex pleasure with lovers, and she became situated in perfect peace. Then she sat down on her bed. Text 44. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. Therefore, completely cutting off her desire to enjoy so-called lovers, Pingala very happily went to sleep. Did we read that also? No? Okay. Purport by Bhaktisiddhanta, because there's no BBC purport, apparently. Sense enjoyers are always disturbed in this world of so-called enjoyment, hiding somewhere nearby the path of renunciation. The threefold material miseries inspire careless transcendentalists to become enjoyers of perishable material objects whenever they get the slightest opportunity. The sinful desire for attaining fame even while tied by the ropes of desires for material enjoyment, sometimes induces the conditioned souls to become servants of Ravana. Comes a Jarasandha, Agha, Baka, and Putana. If the conditioned souls turn off the temporary lamp of material desires and become attached to lotus feet of the inhabitants of Vraja, that's called Raganuga, then all auspiciousness will be within their grasp. Pseudo-renunciation makes a living entity very proud. On the other hand, proper renunciation places living entities on the platform of pure goodness or transcendence. Paragraph. Until the lamp of material desire is turned off, a devotee's desire for the service of the lotus feet of Sri Radha cannot materialize. I'll read it again. Until the lamp of material desire is turned off, a devotee's desire for the service of the lotus feet of Sri Radha cannot materialize. In this regard, one should contemplate the meaning of the verse, Asha Barayar Amrita Sindhu Ma Yai Katanchit. Translation. Oh, ravishingly beautiful Sri Radhe, I am passing my days and nights in torment with the singular hope that I may obtain the ocean of immortal nectar, so kindly shower your glance upon me. Deprived of your mercy, of what use are my life residence in Braja and even servitorship to Krishna, the enemy of Bakasura? Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's writing, Vilapa Kushamanjali. Sri Guru Sundar has taught us the mood of separation, that the mood of separation is the best process for relishing the mellows of ecstatic love for Krishna. And Vishwanath's commentary, short, thus ends the commentary of the 8th chapter of the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam for the pleasure of the devotees in accordance with the previous acharyas. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. Therefore, completely cutting off her desires to enjoy what is things of a happiness. To become existent, that will be self-fulfilling. And two more references. This is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, making reference to the section from Krishna Karnamrita. In this calamity, what shall I do? To whom should we speak? Whatever I desire to accomplish, whatever I desire to have, so confusion, pondering, to whom should we speak? You are also in a similar state. We should ask something else so that there is a good result. philosophical consideration of mati appears, covering her state of pondering. This is similar to the following state of Pingala. This verse, final verse of the chapter. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. Therefore, completely cutting off her desire to enjoy lovers, Pingala happily went to sleep. This is matihi, or pondering. Beyond pondering is a philosophical position. When mati appears, she says, Pingala, what has been accomplished by that desire has been accomplished. Nothing else can be done now. Or, the phrase can mean, whatever was accomplished by that desire has produced useless results. This means, therefore, to give up that desire. Then she speaks with a manifestation of Radha, with a manifestation of indignation. Giving up all topics of that ungrateful person. You Sakis should speak of other topics which are pure. He speaks to one Saki. That Saki should speak other topics. Heart Krishna thinks, and she thinks, Cupid is piercing him with arrows. Her indignation becomes covered by sudden fear. He who lies in the heart, Cupid, the enemy, is killing him. What should he do? Then she speaks of remorse, Vishada, along with astonishment, and Krishna appears in her heart. Oh, the person about whom we desire to give up, speaking about, is in my heart. Then, covering that sudden fear, natural impatience, out. Smile sweeter than honey, and a form bursting with the liquor of Cupid. He produces great joy for the eyes and mind. The internal meaning is the same as the previous verse. The external meaning is clear. Expert in separation, Rati develops its full form of rasa in astonishing bliss. And since it does not give up this form at all, any suffering is encased only. a transformation of astonishing bliss because it is the essence of highest bliss, and because it has its cause in Bhagavan, who is the source of all bliss. It is called only an appearance of the greatest suffering because there is a superimposition of suffering on Rati caused by awareness and separation. This suffering acts as a cause for further Rati, as well as experience, with the hope of attaining to permanently. Transformation of the rasa here means that the rasa develops whole form. The cause of rati not giving up its nature is anything. It is strong. It is strong. Because the rati or attachment to Krishna is strong. It does not give up hope of attaining Krishna. It is not possible for it to do so. This is illustrated with Pingala's verse. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. Therefore, completely cutting off her desire to enjoy so-called lovers, Pingala very happily went to sleep. And then quotes, this is last. Indeed, the greatest happiness is to renounce all desires, as even the prostitute Pingala has declared. Yet, even though we know this, we cannot give it up. We'll be ready for the next chapter, 9. And these 3 chapters, 7, 8, 9, they go together, all preparing us for providing a resource for becoming detached from attachment, material attachment, or seeking happiness in the temporary, seeking happiness in sense gratification. A lot of emphasis in this whole section, so far, 2 chapters, is the temporary nature of material experience or material objects, experience of material objects. It's all temporary, whatever it is. And understanding that this is this same thing, that everything is under the grip of the serpent of time, because time destroys and serpents kill. We're just reading yesterday evening when Ravana was going after Yamaraj. There were 2 associates on either side, time and death. The serpent of time and death. Because time destroys things. And, there's time brings things into being also, and time destroys things. So what's beyond time that brings things into being and destroys things? It's a philosophical consideration, but what about becoming detached from that which is destroyed? It takes intelligence and spiritual strength, because tendency is, we know what tendency is. I was thinking about your question yesterday about wealth. I gave an answer. I had some further thought about it. I'm going to share it right now. There's knowledge in detachment, and then there's also regulation. So one of the principles of regulation specific to wealth is percentages. If the balloon starts to become bigger or the balloon starts to shrink, you just stick to percentages. Like that's, whether it's Kolovich or Sridhar, who had next to nothing and 50% was worship of the Ganges, or Prabhupada's universal statement that says householders should give it 50%. Now 50% of what? And anyway, some percentage. And then it doesn't take away the hankering or the material hankering. It just regulates it and sets down a principle that says if there is some increase, it's not going to get swallowed by more or the material objects, a better grade of object or something. Not yet. I'm not done. The way that Prabhupada lived in Vrindavan was a way that most, let's say, of his Western disciples would not be able to. And by nature, he was very careful with everything. Something that I learned as a new devotee. When Prabhupada received mail, he opened the envelope and used the inside of the envelope to write things on. He was very frugal. He lived that way in India, especially when he was not, engaged in business and didn't have resource. And he had to somehow get the funds to print the Bhakti-Gita magazine, etc., etc. They're very careful and living very simple. Look at those little rooms that he stayed in Radha Damodar temple. And when he came to America, it's shocking. Where he stayed was in an office that had no running water, it had no toilet, it had no kitchen. At least, in the Radha Damodar it could remain clean. But what are you going to do? You live in an office that has no running water, no bathroom, no shower, no. So it's sometime in the morning when Dr. Mishra was up, he went outdoors in the freezing cold, went to his place, took his bath, did his cooking. Who's going to do that? Aristocratic. Anyway, so his capacity for simplicity, and then completely on the other side, accepting the offerings of his disciples because it was good for them. I'm just in a mood of appreciating the flexibility of Srila Prabhupada's life. He was very content. It wasn't uncomfortable. He was very content to live very, very simply. And he was not attached to opulence. That he could move freely and he was trying to teach us the same. So I don't want to get too far afield from he had the capacity, he tried to impart that capacity to us. He recognized that his Western disciples needed a certain amount of creature comfort in order to be peaceful. Like in Mayapur, so the long building and a zillion mosquitoes and people were getting malaria left and right. And running water and hot water and all those things. But just so that they could be peaceful. But for himself, living in a grass hut when he went there. Peaceful. Happy. And, something more extravagant, peaceful. Happy. That's from the bhakti principle, not just from the sense control principle. And sense control is a subset of bhakti. And so to get on the other side of the material desire, because that's what's being spoken of specifically, material desire is the greatest unhappiness, letting go of it is the greatest happiness. But letting go of it permanently, there has to be shelter. Otherwise, you won't let go of it permanently. As you were saying, it'll rise again. Material desire. It's just the default position. So the object, Krishna, we have to get it on the other side of indifference or aversion to. Indifference is a little softer, maybe a little bit more accurate with when we're chanting and we're distracted. Not aversion, maybe it's aversion. It seems more accurate, indifference. But then on the flip side, there's indifference to the material circumstance. When there's affinity for the Supreme Lord, there's indifference to the material. Indifference in the sense that if this isn't bringing me happiness or unhappiness, you deal appropriately with whatever the external circumstance is. That's practical devotional service. But it's not, this is happiness and that's distress. And if you don't have shelter in Krishna, that's your world, happiness and distress, being tossed around by the waves of material happiness and distress. And it's not real happiness because it's forgetfulness. And that's the message we're hearing. The obstacle of attachment needs to be removed. Knowledge will help. All these 24 gurus helping to remove attachment to the temporary, jnana vairagya. But the purpose is real shelter. And somehow Pingala got, she won the jackpot. She got detachment and bhakti at the same time. Lots of mercy. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaja. 1 minute. So, anybody has questions?
You go ahead.
Okay. So Maharaj, the question I had was earlier, the diversion, the indifference and aversion, I couldn't make out the huge difference. Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj, I'm okay.
Can I read that question to Guru Maharaj?
Yes. Thank you.
His English.
Prabhu.
The mic is
Maharaj mic is not working.
Maybe the problem is not in your technology. Maybe the problem is with the microphone. Maybe that's why they couldn't hear me off or on. They could hear me. We just had. Let's see if this makes a difference. Now, hopefully, those of you who are online can hear. So, a second answer. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in English in Sri Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts. It's a little skinny book he wrote in English in 1896 and sent to the world, to universities in the world, at his own expense. He in the second and the precepts, it's the living entities. It's of the 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. One of them is living entities are eternally Krishna parts and parcels, and they're captured in the material world. So he writes, do not ask this misleading question, when was the living entity created? Or when the living entity is enthralled. Now, is the living entity enthralled? Yes. One way of reading is we're eternally conditioned. There's not a fall, we're just eternally conditioned. And eternally conditioned? It sounds like that's whimsical. Some living entities, you're over there, you're the eternally liberated group. Some living entities, you're the... What's the cause of some being eternally conditioned? Was the Lord just saying, you guys go over there and you guys stay here? It's whimsical. So, another reading is, the living entities have an eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord of love. It's constitutionally within every living entity. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. It's already there. So what's the cause? Looking for the cause to be within the realm of time is a mistake. It's not a chronological event. It's an ontological event. What's the ontological event? That's my language. He doesn't say that. It's an event. It's expressing reality. Ontology is an expression of reality, just the way things are. Ontologically, a choice was made. Then comes, well, wait a minute. If we made a choice, what's the cause of the choice? Because it's a really dumb choice. So why would we make we're in the place of perfection and we make a dumb choice? Why would we do that? It's really dumb. It's looking for an external reason. And the internal reason is there isn't an external reason. It's misuse of free will. Okay, why did we misuse our free will? It's an ontological existence of every living entity. We have free will and we can misuse or properly use. And it comes from within, it doesn't come from something outside. That's not satisfying, because why would we do something so dumb? What's the cause? Misuse of free will. Why? What's the cause of the misuse of free will? It's within the living entity. Krishna's not to blame. He didn't say, okay, you guys go to the bad place and you guys stay here with me. That's my decision. You're forever over there in that nitya baddha condition. That's not Krishna. Now, some people hold the view. That's Krishna. Some here, some there. It's nitya siddha, nitya baddha. There's no fall of the living entity. There's not. So the problem with the question is, once upon a time, da-da-da, some time passed, and then we said, you know what, I'm out of here. It's an event in time. And what would we make such a dumb decision? As if it's an event in time. It's not a chronological event. To ask the question in a chronological manner, according to Bhaktivinoda, is a misleading question. Was there misuse of free will? Misuse of free will. Was it an event in time? No. What caused us misuse of free will? There's no cause. It's just intrinsic to the living entity to make proper or misuse of free will. It's not a material event, because material events are within time. And this is not an event within time. Is it an event? Yes. That's baffling, isn't it? Because we don't know, we don't have a way of thinking of something that's not within time, an event that's not within time, a timeless event. Puzzling. There's other answers. One of the ones that Prabhupada would give is called the crow and tal fruit logic. It's a Nyaya principle. So here's the situation. A crow was flying and he landed on the branch of a tree and the tal fruit fell. So one observer says the tal fruit fell because the crow landed on the branch of the tree. That agitation of the branch caused the tal fruit to fall. And the other says, no, the tal fruit just fell. The crow landing on the branch didn't cause the tal. It was just time for the tal fruit to fall. No, this, and no, that. So what's the cause of the tal fruit falling? And there isn't an answer. You're not going to get, we have some persons say this and some persons say that. Not conclusive. Don't, it's the advice in that example, the Prabhupada told the story more than one time. You're not going to find out the answer by then empiric speculation. What's the cause? Why did the living entity fall? And some people say, well, there's no fall. It just never happened. Speculation. What's the cause? Why did the living entity fall? And some people say, well, there's no fall. It just never happened. And the unpleasantness of that idea is Krishna's whimsical. Kind to some and not kind to others. That's not Krishna. You just go to hell. Go into the world of suffering. So there. Too bad for you. But, I'll let you back. Anyway. Not let you back because there's no back. So we're back online, and we're going to end the class because you didn't hear the class, because our microphone system wasn't working properly. But we do plan to fix that. At least we know which one is working and which one is not. Okay? We're done. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.